This was a hard video to make because there's a lot going on in California. The wildfires. These are personal tragedies for a lot of families. Fires like the Palisades, Eaton, Hearst, and Woodley have destroyed thousands of homes, displaced families, and left communities struggling with loss. And the ripple effects of all of this go way beyond what we see on social media. Every year, these fires rip through communities, and they leave behind a trail of destruction and displace thousands of lives. There's stories of parents rushing to evacuate their children, firefighters risking their lives on the front lines, lost and hurt pets, families returning to find everything they owned reduced to ash, and it's all really heartbreaking. And I just want to say that there is no dollar amount that's worth a life. But unfortunately, there is a reality to face because there is a financial cost that people have to deal with after the fire is put out, and those costs are going to be paid by the people of California, and they're going to be paid by the entire country. So as the dust settles, I think people are rightfully angry because this keeps on happening every year, and it seems to just get worse. Even though I personally don't live in California, I have friends that do, and they want answers for why this keeps on happening. Why is the leadership of California prioritizing what it is over the safety of its own people? And why is their insurance cost about to go up? So in this video, I want to explain some of what's going on, why this happened, and what the real cost will be. So with that said, let's get into it. Hi, my name is Andrei Jikh. Hope you're doing well, and I hope you guys are safe out there because the 2024 wildfire season has been one of the most destructive years on record. Now, before I show you, keep in mind, when I say the word acre, it's a lot of land. An acre is 43,560 square feet. It's hard to believe, but according to Bankrate, the median square footage of the average house in the United States is about 2,200 square feet. Now, assuming these are all single-story homes and sprawled out over the widest area possible, that's about 19 houses worth of space in an acre. Now that you have an idea of how big an acre is and how many houses it can fit, in 2025, less than 1 month into the year, Los Angeles alone has already lost 35,866 acres. That's 1.5 billion square feet, equivalent to over 27,102 football fields. So the question is, how did it happen? And it all started due to a series of high winds of over 100 miles per hour, which started a chain reaction of fires across 7 different counties, including the Palisades, which covered over 31 square miles, destroying thousands of structures, the Eaton Fire, which started in North LA County. There's the Kenneth Fire, which ignited in the Woodland Hills neighborhood of LA, the Hearst and Lydia Fires, which also burned hundreds and hundreds of acres, and then there's the Sunset Fire, which started in Hollywood Hills, and the Woodley Fire. There's entire neighborhoods in LA County that are under evacuation orders. So the question is then, how did we get here? And why does it keep on happening? Now, before this happened, the leadership of California was warned that something like this could happen.
Here we are with thousands of acres and billions of dollars every year. It's the same thing every year. And they don't want to clean up their forests because they have environmental problems in cleaning it up. It should be the opposite, because you're going to lose your forest. You're losing them. But it's costing our country hundreds of billions of dollars because of incompetence in California.
So they were given simple instructions of what to do and how to potentially lower the risk of something like this happening. Clean up dead leaves and other flammable debris. These planned burns can actually help maintain forests by making the fires less intense and easier to control by burning out all the dry fuel for a future fire. Now, unfortunately, California has a really strict environmental policy that doesn't allow this to happen at the proper scale. So the warnings were ignored, and instead, 7 months before the fires started, the mayor signed a $17 million budget cut to the Los Angeles Fire Department that the police chief said hugely affected their ability to fight these fires.
Let me be clear. The $17 million budget cut and the elimination of our civilian positions like our mechanics did and has and will continue to severely impact our ability to repair our apparatus.
As a result of that, the LAFD canceled their yearly fire hydrant testing due to, quote, fiscal challenges. And to make things worse, when the city needed it most, there was no water coming out of the fire hydrants.
We saw an apartment building engulfed in flames. I saw the fire engine pull up this afternoon, a fire captain have one of his firefighters attach a hose to a hydrant, and that hose didn't fill up, Alex. And I asked the captain, out of every 10 hydrants you attach to today, on average, how many are you getting full water from? He says little to none.
So there wasn't enough water to pressurize all the fire hydrants, and people have lost their homes, their loved ones, and some people have lost their lives. And now, understandably, people are angry, they're upset, and they want answers.
If it is true that things were handled this way, if it is true that Gavin Newsom is the absolute blithering idiot that I believe he is in the way he has handled fire management in this state again and again and again and again. This isn't a wake-up call. This is the kind of thing they have tribunals for, where they try people and say, you had an oath of office to perform certain duties. When you're the fire chief, this isn't a social justice exercise that you're in charge of. This is you getting water to areas that need water because there are fires in 100-mile-an-hour winds burning houses to the ground.
Now, one of the most common questions I saw is, why doesn't California use all the water it has access to put the fires out? Is it really because LA is running out of water? How's that possible, right? It's next to the ocean. And the answer is a failing infrastructure and a failure of priorities. And here's an example. At one point in time, California had a lot more water. In fact, California once had a lake at the center of the state called Lake Corcoran, which was an ancient lake formed by rainfall and melting glaciers 600,000 years ago. Now, eventually, the lake reached a critical level, and it formed channelways where the water drained out into the Pacific Ocean, and what was left of the water became known as Lake Talar. At one point, it was the biggest freshwater lake west of the Mississippi River and the sixth biggest lake in the United States. The California Central Valley flourished and everyone was happy, but over time, less rainfall and human intervention changed a lot of things. Because as California grew, farmers started to drain the lake to irrigate or water their fields. The government also funded massive dam and canal projects to divert the lake's water, which ultimately caused Lake Talar to disappear by the early 20th century. And that decision came at a cost. And the cost was that it led to soil salinization, which threatened a long-term farming ability because farmers can't grow healthy crops on bad soil. And the loss of the lake disrupted the local ecosystem. And now, I think that mismanagement of the ecosystem over the course of 100 years and draining the lake left a scar and their ability to make policy decisions today. Because California became hyper-aware about protecting its environment and its ecosystems. And I think that sensitivity is reflected in a lot of California's modern policies, like the controversial Delta smelt that you probably heard of. Now, the Delta smelt is a 3-inch silvery blue fish that lives in the San Francisco Bay and the San Joaquin Delta, and it's been at the center of this water controversy. The fish's declining population is protected under what's called the Endangered Species Act, which mandates that some specific amount of fresh water flow through the delta to keep that fish content. Now, this policy means that water that could be diverted and used for farmers and firefighters is instead used to sustain the smelt and its ecosystem. And while some people say it's not about protecting the fish, it's just that the fish's declining population is a sign of the declining health of the ecosystem, that's what people are ultimately debating. Are we protecting a fish whose importance we don't really fully understand, or should we prioritize practical needs like people's homes and lives? And this is an example of a failure of priority. But another example is California's very old infrastructure, because a lot of it was built in the early 20th century and it hasn't kept up with the state's population growth, which has ballooned from around 10 million people in the 1950s to nearly 40 million people today. Now, California has a reservoir storage capacity of about 42 million acre-feet. But during peak rainfall years, for example, the state loses over 10 million acre-feet of water to runoff due to limited storage and outdated systems. The Central Valley irrigation system alone sees up to 30% water loss due to evaporation and inefficiency. and the fire hydrants weren't designed to fight fires that consume hundreds of homes at the same time. We could probably engineer some, but the ones we have today were not designed to do that. That's how unprepared the system is for modern times. So there needs to be a better balance of priorities, because today, California's policies are shaped by its past and not its future. And it's just as true for its environment as it is for home insurance and how much people are going to end up paying for it. Because beyond the tragic destruction, there is another crisis, which is what people are going to pay per month for their home insurance. And that's because in response to these fires, a lot of the insurance companies are pulling out of California. Since 2019, more than 100,000 Californians have lost their insurance. State Farm, for example, just recently canceled 72,000 policies in California, including 30,000 for homes. And other major insurance companies like Allstate have stopped offering new policies in high-risk areas. I had my own home insurance policy get canceled because of the fires that happened last year, and I live in Las Vegas, Nevada. So I learned that when insurance companies have to pay billions in payouts year after year, they're left with two choices: either withdraw from the market or raise premiums significantly across the entire country. Now, for California homeowners, this means they have to turn to a catastrophic insurance plan. And that option is called the California Fair Plan. It serves as the last resort, and it's designed for high-risk homeowners, and it's not the ideal plan to have because the monthly payment on those plans, or premiums as they're called, are way higher, with some estimates saying that it costs twice as much as standard insurance policies, and their coverage is limited. A lot of times, the FAIR plan leaves out liability protection, or it only gives partial coverage for rebuilding costs. So even if someone is covered, they may not be reimbursed for the full amount that it costs to rebuild their home at current value. And because of California's strict environmental and housing policies, that means all these homes can't be rebuilt the way they were before, because these restrictions are a lot tighter today than they were when those homes were built. And this has created a housing market where a lot of California's wealth and the property taxes tied to it are now at risk of pulling out of LA. And that's because when wealthier neighborhoods face constant destruction and rising insurance costs and bureaucracy that won't allow them to rebuild their homes to the way they were before, families are incentivized to leave. And this creates a ripple effect. Property tax revenues go down, and that means schools make less money gets spent on infrastructure, public services and insurance gets affected, which puts even more financial pressure on the city. Analysts predict that homeowners in California could see their insurance costs go up by up to 40% on average. And this crisis is not just affecting people living in California, it's a warning sign for the rest of the country. States like Florida, Texas, and Colorado are already seeing the same trends, with insurance costs going up because insurance companies want to stay ahead. They're not going to wait for more disasters to raise their premiums. So if your insurance rate goes up or your policy gets canceled, this could be the potential reason why. Now, hopefully this is a wake-up call to look at the problems of California and its leadership and the need for a national conversation about loosening regulations and letting people build again. If you're a homeowner, simple things like creating fire-resistant landscaping, using non-flammable materials, and installing ember-resistant vents can lower a home's risk and potentially lower your premiums. But the truth is, there really isn't much people can do against the brute force of nature. The one thing you can do, though, is take the time to review your insurance policy, including deductibles, exclusions, coverage limits, just to make sure you're protected. Now, I hate reading contracts that are hundreds of pages long, so I'll plug them into ChatGPT and I'll ask it to break it down in a simple language, and I have it explain to me where exclusions might apply and what I have to do to make sure that they honor what I'm paying for. So shop around, and if you're moving to a high-risk area, look at your insurance options as early as you can to avoid any surprises. This was not the video that I wanted to make this week, but I'd love to know your thoughts either way. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I'd love to see you back here next week. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.